actually got a break from the rain today. What do you know? What's up, everyone? It's that two-wheel loving boy, Shockmoto here. I wanted to have a video to talk to you folks about the 5 things that I told myself when I first started riding motorcycles. You know, it's been about 6 months now since I first started, so I think I'm qualified enough to talk to you from the perspective of somebody who's starting to find themselves and evolve as a motorcycle rider. So these are the 5 things that, you know, I told myself when I really started researching bikes and understanding, you know, what it means to even ride a motorcycle. I started understanding the prerequisites before you got on a bike, like getting your gear. You know, I did some research about how to get your license and all that stuff. And, you know, these are really the 5 things that I was telling myself before I even swung my leg over the saddle for the first time. So number 1, the first thing I told myself when I first started riding motorcycles was that I wouldn't get bored of my first bike, that I would buy a bike and that it would easily be enough for me. And here we are, 2 bikes later. And I think that really plays into the importance of actually properly doing your research before you go in and you get a bike. Overwhelmingly, the feedback that I had received from my peers around buying a motorcycle was it was really as simple as just going into a shop, swinging your leg over a bunch of motorcycles, and seeing what felt best to you. And while I certainly think that a degree of that is helpful, it's definitely not, you know, the whole picture of riding a motorcycle. For example, on this bike here, when I sat on it, I fell in love with it. And I still absolutely love this bike. I am not trading this bike in. However, sitting on it, it gave me no inclination into how it was actually going to feel in a corner. And I got to tell you, this thing is heavy in a corner. There was absolutely no way for me to know that, you know, swinging my leg over it and sitting on it in a dealership. And especially if you're a new rider, you don't even have your endorsement yet, they're not going to let you take it out on a test drive. So all you have to go off of is that feeling of the ergonomics when you're sitting on it. And again, while that is important, it only captures a sliver of the experience of riding a motorcycle. You don't know what its braking power is like. You don't know what its cornering power is like. So the point here is, you really need to do your research. You need to get an understanding of what kind of riding you envision yourself doing, and you know, try to get a bike that's going to accommodate that. Talk to your peers, do your research. If I knew today what I knew before, I probably wouldn't have bought a CB500 first. I likely would have bought some sort of 600, you know, a Super Sport. I would have bought a Super Sport for sure. So do your research. Sit on bikes, yes, absolutely. But don't let that be like, oh, I sat on it, I fell in love, here we are. That's not enough. The second thing that I told myself when I first started riding motorcycles is I would be at GAT, all the gear, all the time. Well, all the time. And I was for a little while, actually. I wore all my gear for probably the first 2 months, and that was honestly through the hottest months of the year. So I really endured the hottest in all my gear. You can see today I'm actually wearing pretty normal jeans and some hiking shoes. So I don't actually advise that, but I'm coming from work right now and these are my work clothes. And unfortunately, it's not easy for me to pack up a bunch of stuff to take it to work, and most of my commute is in traffic anyway. So, you know, all these little variables started adding up, and it helped me understand that there is calculated risk involved with defining when you need to have all your gear all the time. And while I do advocate having all your gear all the time, you know, it follows along with the better safe than sorry ideology, which I absolutely agree with. But sometimes it doesn't always make sense to gear all the way up to go right down the road. So, you know, if you're going into this saying, I'm going to have all my gear all the time, I think that's honestly the right attitude to have. And you should try to hold true to that for as long as you possibly can. But in all honesty, at some point, you're going to get confident enough on a motorcycle to not feel like you need to have a turtle shell all the time. So that one's pretty short and sweet, you know, pretty self-explanatory. You get comfortable, you get warm, you want to wear what's comfortable when you get to work, so you're not having to carry, spare clothes with you everywhere you go. So every now and then, you know, when I get out into the twisties, I'm absolutely all my gear. I'm calculating how likely it is for me to go down. And, you know, when I'm sitting in traffic on my way to work, the chances are pretty low. But when I'm, you know, ripping through a corner and I'm pushing my boundaries, that's really when I'm most likely going to go down if it's going to happen. So obviously I wear all my gear in those moments. The third thing that I told myself when I first started riding motorcycles is I would always have a healthy fear of my motorcycle. And while that's absolutely true today, and I do have a very healthy fear of this Shiver 900 here, that wasn't always the case. My CB500, I got extremely comfortable on that bike, and I really felt like I could just fling it around, and you know, I was the master of my domain on that motorcycle. However, there's something called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and if you've never heard it before, I highly recommend checking out Dan the Fireman's videos, or channel even. He has a really good explanation of the Dunning-Kruger effect, but in essence, it's when your confidence starts overlapping your actual skill level. So, you know, the more comfortable you get on a motorcycle, the more you feel like you just got this. But when you're in a, you know, a life or death situation, you're resorting back to that last base level of training that you have to respond in that situation, and oftentimes you just don't have the training to instinctually handle that situation and fight back against your survival reactions. So that's basically a long-winded explanation to say you need to maintain a healthy fear of your motorcycle, even though you're getting extremely confident on it. And that's another reason why I decided to upgrade is, and I don't think that the end justifies the means here. I don't advocate you guys to go out and buy a motorcycle just because you're not, you know, fearing your previous one. I don't think that that's a responsible way to go about it. But as a new rider, that's where my brain was at. I was like, well, I don't fear this motorcycle anymore. That means I'm ready for the next step up. So all I'm saying here is just be cautious. Be cautious of that mindset. Try to maintain a healthy respect, even though you do feel like you're gaining mastery on your machine. Continue to level up yourself through training, and don't just feel like because I can drive straight really quick that I'm an expert rider. You know, you're likely not. The fourth thing that I told myself when I first started riding a motorcycle is that I would never really speed, that I would drive my motorcycle the same way that I drive my car. And I drive a Volvo S60 when I'm not, you know, riding my bike, which is an extremely comfortable, just safe ride. I go slow. I don't really speed. I don't break any, you know, speed limits. I'm pretty much a well-to-do citizen on the road in my Volvo, and I thought that that would translate directly over onto a motorcycle. And for the first 3 months or so, you know, your body has to get used to speed. So I didn't really speed at all. In fact, I had a hard time keeping up with traffic at times because, well, going, you know, 45 miles an hour on, you know, feeling like you're sitting on a bucket, it can be a little scary. So yeah, I told myself that I wasn't ever going to speed, but the more I got comfortable, well, I found myself going faster and faster. And now it's fun. And honestly, these machines are so powerful that I just look down and whoops, I'm going 10, 15 over the speed limit. For those of you who watched my moto key tag hunt in an abandoned hospital video, you saw some of that. You know, I'd look down and be like, whoops, I'm going 60 in a 30 or a 35. I better slow the hell down. It happens all the time. So it's honestly very easy to do. The more comfortable you get with the speed, the more you'll find yourself going faster and faster. And then, you know, eventually 100 becomes the normal, most likely. Again, I don't advocate that, but for you Gixxer boys out there, I'm sure that 100 is going to become the norm. And just remember, I absolutely encourage you to follow traffic laws. Speeding isn't always smart, but you know, sometimes it's the right opportunity to do so. And let's face it, it's a lot of fun. It's part of the reason we own a motorcycle in the first place. It's kind of like saying, here's a dragon, but you know, don't go flying around breathing fire or anything. Yeah, friggin' right, man. You just handed me a dragon. What do you think I'm gonna do? I'm gonna fly around and breathe fire. But again, you know, dragons are dangerous. So I guess what I'm saying here is take your time, really ease yourself into it, and don't be surprised if you're telling yourself today, I don't want to go fast. You know, just watch. 6 months down the road, I guarantee you're going to be going a lot faster than you expected. And the fifth and final thing that I told myself when I first started riding a motorcycle was that I wouldn't succumb to the group pressure in a group ride. You know, I wouldn't let the riding of others around me influence or dictate how I was riding my ride. And while I certainly think that it's still a fundamental principle to ride your own ride, it's hard to deny the ego that exists. You know, when I ride in a group ride, something just happens. I don't go busting dank woolies or anything, you know. I'm not going crazy out there, but it's a different atmosphere. You know, you're with your friends. You want to have a good time. You want to joke. You want to laugh. You want to see cool things. You want to make it worth it. You know, you want to be with your homies making memories, and oftentimes that incites a little bit of spirited riding, I guess I should say. You know, it's easy to go fast and weave around in between cars when you got a whole group of people doing it. You don't want to get left behind. You want to make sure that they know how cool you are. So that's definitely one thing I told myself, is I was always like, you know what, I'll probably always ride by myself. I don't really care what those around me are doing. I just want to get on a motorcycle and have a good time. I'll ride my own ride. And I do that. I still do that. I do that a lot. But again, once you get into that group setting, it's really easy to succumb to the entertainment value of having a grandiose old time. And that's why I stress finding a group. If you're going to ride with people, which I absolutely advocate riding with people, I think that nothing improves your skill level like riding with other people. Getting a sense as to what an appropriate line looks like. Really seeing how far people can lean on their motorcycles. A YouTube video is great, but it's not an end-all be-all. You really need to be out there getting critique and insight from other more experienced riders. And it's also a great experience to get out there and ride with people who are also new to riding. Have that shared experience, and I find that newer riders are more open to accepting new information. So when you're having a back and forth with another new rider, I oftentimes find a lot of useful information gets passed and forth between the two. So, you know, I absolutely advocate getting out there and riding with other people, especially if you can find a mentor. That's been one of my greatest experiences in riding so far, is finding a good group of people to ride with who, and I talked a little bit about this in our ride to Whidbey Island, who know how to get out there and open it up and go fast and lean hard if they, you know, if the opportunity is appropriate for that. But they also know how to dial it back and have a real easy, nice putt through the city. You know, it doesn't always have to be a race to get from A to B every single time. And I think that that's truly the most important thing about being with other people. So if you're new to riding and you're planning on meeting up with other people for your group ride, I would seriously consider taking a look at, you know, the principles or the core values of that group. And you don't always have to go up to people and say, hey, what are your core values? You can honestly tell. You can just look at them. If they're all on a bunch of stunner bikes and they got cages, they got crash bars, they're all a bunch of squids, yeah, you might want to stay clear for a little while, because chances are each one of them is going to want to be at the front all day long. So you might find yourself in some bad situations with a group like that. I honestly recommend riding around with a group of older individuals, and that may come off a little bit of, you know, as ageist, but I do find that older individuals that have been riding for a long time really do instill best practices. And since they've been riding for so long, the thrill for them isn't always just gunning the throttle every single time. To them, you know, riding is life, and life is riding. And those are the kind of people that I want to learn from. So I know that was kind of long-winded, but again, I really told myself at the beginning I would always ride my own ride, and really watch out in those group settings, because something takes over us as humans. We have that pack mentality, and something really happens, and it doesn't always feel like you're in control of it. It's kind of like getting drunk, you know. It's an outside influence that really dictates your behavior. So be careful of that. Do ride your own ride. Do ride your own ride. So yeah, those are the 5 things that I told myself when I first started riding a motorcycle. Again, elements of it are still true today, but my perception of what riding a motorcycle is like is vastly different today than it was 6 months ago. Again, I really wish that I had people that rode that I knew as I was getting into it, so that they could have directed me in the appropriate way. You know, again, don't just go and sit on a motorcycle and say, yep, this is the one. You join Facebook groups of people that have that motorcycle. Get on Reddit and understand, you know, the pros and cons of that bike. Because again, it may look beautiful in the showroom, but if you're in a quarter and you feel like completely unconfident on the machine that you're in, or you're on rather, that's not a good situation to be in. Well, with that said, thanks for watching my video today. I know it was a quick one, but again, I saw a break in the clouds and I said, oh man, I gotta get out there. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was entertaining for you. I hope any new riders that are out there that are watching this video are getting some perspective on how the mentality on a motorcycle kind of changes. At least, you know, my story, that's certainly what happened here. I'm sure everybody has a little bit of a different story as to what they first thought and what they think now. So anyway, with that, I hope you guys ride safe. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you like and subscribe for the next one, and I'll see you in my next video.